Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely, and parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/Wondery.
I've got 20 minutes till Run Club meets, and it's time for a quick pre-workout snack. Go Squeeze Active Fruit Blend to the rescue. Made with select B vitamins to help release energy, it's an easy, squeezable pouch made to move with me. The taste, so good. And made with real fruit, even better. Whether I'm hitting the trail or meeting my friends on the court, this is my go-to on-the-go snack. Quick, easy, ready when I am. When it's go time, I go with Go Squeeze Active. Snag yours on your next door run. Search for Go Squeeze on Amazon.
Hi, I'm Jessie Bray. And I'm Andy Cassette. Welcome to Love Murder, where we unravel the darkest tales of romance turned deadly. Our episodes are long-form, narrative-driven, and deeply researched. Perfect for the true crime aficionados seeking stories beyond the headlines. Like the chilling case of Blanche Taylor Moore, the so-called Black Widow who left a trail of poisoned lovers. Or the shocking murders of Chad Shelton and Dwayne Johnson, where family ties masked a sinister plot. Subscribe to Love Murder on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Alice.
And we are the Prosecutors. Today on the Prosecutors, Terry Hobbs joins us to give his side of the story. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Prosecutors. I'm Brett, and I'm joined with several people today. I have Alice, my eternal co-host, Julia from The Consult, always glad to have her, and our special guest, Terry Hobbs. Terry, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show with us and discuss this case. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me. I'm sure there's a lot we can share.
I'm sure there is. And Terry, I think it's always 1993 for people when they're thinking about this case and thinking about the boys and what happened. But I'm actually interested, before we start talking about that, a little bit about your life and how things have been going in the last decade or so, well after this case and after the West Memphis 3 were released from prison. What have you been up to? What has your life been like?
Well, I've moved up here to the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas, left Memphis in 2020. And again, I think when I left Memphis, I left a big part of this story in Memphis. I moved from West Memphis to Memphis, and I lived in Memphis roughly 34 years, something like that. And then, I moved up here, and what they call up here is God's country. It is pretty up here during the summer, spring, summer, and fall. And winter times, it's just winter time. But I've moved on. I went to work. I finally went to where I retired at 62, and I was able to do that when we left Memphis. And I was really fortunate to be a part of the company I was with my last 15 working years in Memphis. Okay, he sent us off with the biggest bonus that would just make you cry, and it did. I was not expecting that. And he told us, he said, I want you to get up there and start your life. So I did, and I went to, after about 4 years of just doing nothing or doing whatever we wanted to do, and I got tired of not doing something. So I went to work for a company. I wasn't happy with that. So I walked away from that, and I went to work for a company that the state is funded it and the federal government funds it. And it's a transportation company that we transport people anywhere they want to go. And I have met some cool people, young and old, and just get to work and do something for them. This is a service where we provide for them. And that is, to me, that's a blessing that you're able to do that. And I'm glad that I get to be a part of it. And I think they're happy to have me. They come down, some of the people from the office come down, walked in not long ago, said, "There's our star." I didn't want to hear that, but that's, people look at you like that. Once they look into you and find out what they want to find out, well, all this other pops up. So couldn't hide it. I tried, but couldn't hide it. And I kind of still keep it to myself because I want to get out here and be a blessing to other people. And that's what I get to do. And I'm just tickled to death about it.
And Terry, we won't spend a lot of time on this part, but you brought it up with people looking into you and saying, "There's our star." There's lots of ways to carry a tragedy, a massive part of what has happened in your life with you. How do you see your interaction or your relationship with that sentiment of you're a star being well known outside of your immediate circles nowadays? I mean, you're clearly speaking with us and we truly appreciate your time, but how do you interact with that and how do you carry it with you?
Well, it's there, and that part of it will never leave, and I still, on the anniversary dates, we just had one, and I still do a little, I used to blow it up and do a big memorial when I lived in Memphis. I'd drive over to West Memphis and blow it up. But up here, it's more, low-keyed, and I still don't get out here and share with people, but I try to keep it to myself and stay out of people's way and out of the limelight. Even though good old media's from Memphis, you can't run from them. They look you up and they call you, wanting you to, and I don't do that. I don't trust them, and so I try to stay out of the limelight, if you will. I hope I answered your question.
Oh, you absolutely do. I think we were all on mute. We were all a little bit on mute. And I mean, with that said, truly, thank you. I can't imagine how many people do reach out to you wanting to talk to you. And, I think you've heard our podcast before. We truly come from a place of wanting to see all sides of the issues. And I know your name has been part of a lot of media, but I don't know that you've necessarily been able to speak your side of the story. So I really thank you for coming on today. We're recording late at night for those of you who are listening to this in normal hours. So thank you for giving us, your night to help us understand something that's incredibly, I know, sensitive and dear to your heart and dear to millions of people around the world. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. It's been a life changer, and it just beats you up. There's so many things that you wonder about and you think about all through the years. And, we've always wondered why, why our children, why did this even happen? How the boys that was charged with this had backgrounds like they did. How come they wasn't addressed back then? And you never get all the answers that you're looking for, but, you have to accept some things that you don't want, and then you have to pick up, move on, and do the best you can.
And I did want to mention as we start, even though you're telling your story on here, you have a book, Box Full of Nightmares, which we've mentioned before on the podcast. If you want an in-depth telling of this story from Terry's perspective, I recommend that book. I picked it up, I read it, and it was very insightful. So I did appreciate that.
It is. And, I think we may work on a book too. I've spent off some things for the start of the book too. And then there's a documentary that we're working on to be released. And I think folks are really going to like it because there's a lot of insight there that hopefully that means something. But I'm sure there's folks that don't care. But, you just tell the truth through this thing. My truth has never changed. But I've heard so many other stories that, you just wonder where they get it from. But it's out there.
So going back to May of 1993, let's talk about Stevie a little bit. What was your relationship like with Stevie? What kind of dad would he say you were?
Well, he called me Daddy Terry. He asked me one time, can I do that? I said, well, sure. And to me, he was just a little blonde-haired boy, blue eyes and full of life. And he loved his Ninja Turtle. And He loved Every Rose Had Its Thorn song. When that was on, he took the stage, and he was a good little boy. I kept him together, and I would help him at nighttime in the evenings, do his homework from school because Pam just wouldn't or couldn't. I think she couldn't, but she wouldn't either. So he would ask me, would you help me with my homework? Well, I said, sure. And we kept him on the principal's list, which in their school, Weaver Elementary, it was the highest that the kids could get on was the principal's list. He was on that list for the couple of years that he went to that school. But yeah, Stevie was a good little boy. We took him in to get his haircut that he was wearing the day of May the 5th. And it was a spike haircut. And he sat down and Barbara asked him, he said, what kind of haircut? And he kind of looked at me like he was expecting me to tell him. And Stevie spoke up and he said, I want a spike. So he gave him a spike haircut. We was fine, as long as he was comfortable, he enjoyed himself. He had a good home. I think we had a 33,000-gallon in-ground swimming pool in the back of this home. And that's where we all lived during the summertime, in that pool.
Terry, what was your schedule like before May 5th? Like a typical day, like Stevie's schedule, your schedule. What was it like? Can you remember what you would go to work and come home, and then what were your normal activities?
Well, at the time, now I started working for an ice cream company. Memphis Ice Cream Company was the name of it. And living in West Memphis, I had a 5 or 6 mile commute. And that's what I would do every morning. I'd leave. And here's how this ice cream company worked. If you left early and run your route and you got through at noon, well, you could come in, get your day set up for the next day and go home. So, there's days that you'd be home at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. And if you was come home at 4 o'clock, that was late. No one ever did that. So, I was a working man. And I'd just get up, go to work, come home. And if Pam was working, she worked at the Catfish Island restaurant as a waitress. And at that time, I would run her to work and pick her up when she got off. And I'd go back home. It would be me, Stevie, and then Amanda come along, our daughter. And it'd be us three just, having fun at home. First thing we'd do, I would get with him and get his homework done, get that out of the way. And then the rest of the evening was their evening.
Was he usually home with you? Was May 5th different that day? Because I think I've heard you say before when you got home, he wasn't there. Was that unusual for him not to be home when you got home?
Right. He was always home. For some reason, Pam, she just let him, she told me, she said he just kept on and on and on, wanting to go ride his bicycle. He had a new bicycle. His granddad bought him, and he wanted to go ride with Michael Moore. And Michael Moore would come by and see if he'd go. And that particular day, they on and on. Can I go ride? Pam finally said yes. So he was gone. When I come home, he was gone.
On a regular day, when you'd get home and he was there and you'd help him with his homework, did he usually go off and play after he got his homework done? Was he allowed to do that? Or did he usually stay with you through the evenings?
No, he was allowed. Now, when I was at home and Pam was working, I would let him ride his bicycle, but I would let him ride in front of the house on the sidewalk. I'd tell him stay off the streets, but you can ride up from down there to down here, where I could keep an eye on him if I was home by myself with them. But I wouldn't let him ride all over town, not one time.
And Terry, and sorry, I know we're asking you to remember something so far back. When he would typically, on a regular day, be finished with his homework and he could go out and play, do you know about what hour that would be based on what time school got out, what time dinner was? Was there about a time that he would be able to go out and play once he was done?
No, because once he got his homework done, eat supper, you're roughly in the time frame of 5:30, 6 o'clock, whatever. Could have been 7, could have been 6, I'm not sure. But he was always allowed to go outside. And like I said earlier, during the summertime, it wasn't out front of the house. It was behind the house because we had that big pool, and it had a diving board on one end, had a spiral slide on the other end, and it was hard to get any of us away from that pool. during the summertime. He didn't focus his outside time in the front of the house, riding bicycle all the time, because that pool was everybody's home.
And when he went off to play, was he usually playing or riding his bike with Michael and Christopher? Were those his two closest friends?
Right. I think it was another little young man named George. George would come around sometimes. And I don't think Chris had a bicycle at the time, but Chris would come over. And, if we let him ride it, Stevie was only, when I was home, was only allowed to ride from 2 or 3 houses down either way. Just, stay where we can see you. That's just the way I was.
So it sounds like, based on what you said, Stevie typically good kid. He did what he was told. That day, my understanding is Pam told him to be home around 4:30. Obviously, he wasn't. Was it unusual for him if he was given a time, hey, this is the time you need to be home? Was it unusual for him not to be home when he was supposed to be?
Well, you know what? To me, that's the only time that he had a time. Because we would always tell him, come in before it gets dark, but he wouldn't be all through the neighborhood. Like I said, when I was home, he was just up and down in front of the house on the sidewalk. And if you catch him in the street, I think it was a time when I bought a riding lawnmower, and I took the cage off of it, the blades off of it, just so I could ride up down the street. Then I would let them come out and ride up down the street with us. So somebody had to be the big dog.
And Terry, this is fresh on my mind because I have young kids and I just put them to bed. About what time was a typical bedtime for Stevie in this May time? It's starting to get lighter out. The weather's good. What was his typical bedtime?
Well, now here's one thing that Pam and I had always talked about. 9 o'clock, we want you in the bed, and we'd tell them, the kids, if you have everything done, play-in, schoolwork, homework, whatever, let's get you in bed by 9 o'clock so we can get you up the next morning and go to school.
And so when you said, around dark, come on home, if bedtime's 9, was there a typical time that he'd be home in time to do all the things he has to do to get ready for bed? Would it be like 8 o'clock or another time?
Well, remember, his schoolwork come first before playtime. That was just the rule of the home. After schoolwork was done, eat supper, then do your schoolwork before you go outside. The schoolwork had to be done because we wanted, it's just Southern for you, I guess. Get your homework done, then go have fun. And we did. We'll let them do that.
So you've said, this is probably a dumb question based on what you've said, but you said usually he was supposed to be playing sort of either in the front, in that general area of the home, or maybe in the back. Do you know if before this day he ever went to Robin Hood Hills?
I never heard of Robin Hood Hills until May the 5th. I never even paid attention. I drove past that wooded area for years and never knew it was called Robin Hood, and never knew there was ditches out there where kids played, and never knew there was even paths through there. And I couldn't tell you, but to the best of my knowledge, I would think that he didn't know nothing about Robin Hood. We didn't let him go over to Mike and Christopher's house and stay the day, the night, and come home. I didn't let him do that. So I don't know if he knew it and I didn't know it, but I would say no. I don't think he even heard of Robin or knew of it.
Did he get his homework done that day? Do you remember? Did he sit down and do it? Did any signs that he had been home to do his homework and then went out?
I couldn't tell you. Tell you. When I come home, he wasn't home. Pam was cooking supper. And so I'm going to say that he didn't do his homework because Pam wouldn't do it with him. And I couldn't tell you, but he wasn't there. So I don't know. But I would think not.
Of the boys and his friends, who was the leader of them? Was there a leader that you remember?
Well, that 8-year-old boys have a leader. That's fun.
There's always one.
Yeah, but I guess Michael Moore, he rode around. He carried this plastic police badge, but he would flash that. He'd come in our house and flash that badge, and I would just, have a little fun with it. So I don't know if you would call him the leader. They were just 3 little 8-year-old boys. None of them, once they got in the house, would take the floor, like they was in charge, but they would just come in. Christopher had a crush on Amanda, and he was 8 and she was 4. And I'm just, check this out. One day he come in he's standing there. He's getting ready to leave, and I'm sitting over here in the probably recliner on the couch or somewhere, but I'm sitting there watching him, and he just staring at Amanda. And I look over, I said, "Boy, what you staring at?" And he says, "Amanda." And I said, "Well, you better get out of here and go home." So we had fun with them like that, and I don't know if you could say there was a leader.
Did any of them seem to get more into mischief than others that you ever noticed?
Not at my home. I didn't play that. I didn't play that. 37, 38, something like that, 35. And no, ma'am, you don't come getting mischief at my house. You get run off.
And Stevie pretty much obeyed you most of the time, you'd say?
Well, we didn't have rules and laws and all that they had to go by. I told them back then, and I told my daughter all through the years, I got one rule at my home, and they'd all tell you, do right. I said, that's all you got to do. You do right, and you can do anything you want.
Mm-hmm. And do you remember the last time you saw Stevie?
May the 4th.
May the 4th. When was that, and what was that like for you?
Well, it's just another typical day, probably doing some homework with him, and, another day in the pool. Because it was hot that time of the year in West Memphis. So I'm sure we was in the pool that day.
Then regular night before, put him to bed, and then you must have been up and had gone to work before he even woke up, I would think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm up early. Back then, if I could leave the house around 5, get over to the ice cream company around between 5 and 5:30, and the sooner you left that ice cream plant, that means your day got started. So the sooner you get back. And I was just one of them guys that get out there and busted and work and get done, come in, go. I wanted to get in that pool too.
I was just going to ask, if he'd been gone for a while, if he got hungry at some point, could he have come home and eaten anything without you knowing it? Or were you sort of around the whole time, if that makes sense?
On the 5th?
On the 5th.
Well, I've heard that there was food in his stomach. I've heard that through the years. During the trials, I've heard that. And I'm not going to say he came home because I don't know. I'm not going to say he didn't eat at someone else's place because I don't know. So I don't know where he got that at.
But there wasn't, like, to your knowledge and your recollection, there wasn't like a plate sitting on the table that looked like it had food on it that he could have eaten or anything like that. Any sign of him coming back?
His plate was on the table. It sure was. Pam made it and left it on the table. Now, when we came home, we probably didn't even notice if it had been missing. Any of it was gone, because there was so much that happened so quick, and we didn't even pay attention to what was on the table. We just want to know where they're at.
And you had mentioned your daughter. How old was she in 1993 at this time?
4 years old.
4. So would she also play outside around this time, or was she kind of always going to be home inside because she was younger?
Well, she was in the pool. We was all in the pool. If she went out front, I don't think she even had a bicycle at that time. So she might have been playing in the yard if she was in the yard. If not, she was probably in the back in the pool or with somebody, because we wouldn't let her go in the pool by herself.
Gotcha. So Stevie was old enough he could play by himself outside, usually right in front or right in back. But your daughter was young enough that if she were outside, she would be with one of you, or could she also be with Stevie?
Well, she would, most of the time it was with one of us. Yeah, and Stevie. There was times I'm sure that she was with Stevie, but no, they wasn't outside of our view. I didn't do that.
This particular day, when you got home after Stevie, did you ever, with your early morning hours and trying to get into work early so that you could leave and have more of an afternoon, did you ever get home before Stevie?
Home from work before Stevie got out?
Yeah, or was he always home from school before you?
Well, I'm sure there was days that I came home before. Yeah, I'm going to say there probably was.
So it sounds like what was different about this day is that he was allowed to go off on his bicycle and you weren't there to say, just stay in front of the house. He was allowed to go beyond those boundaries this particular day.
Right. And his mother gave him permission to. Yes, that's true. And I've seen Pam beat herself up so much with that. It breaks your heart, and try to console her. It's not your fault. She blamed herself for years. I shouldn't have let him go right. Well, you can't do that. I mean, you can do that, but it's not good to do that. But, just let people just do what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Summer is here. While we might set goals for swimsuit season, lose weight, exercise more, eat better, it's hard to achieve them without a plan. That's what makes Prolon's 5-day fasting mimicking diet your summer-ready secret weapon. Prolon gives you a science-backed, structured approach to target fat loss and support lean muscle and reset your metabolism so you can look your best and feel confident all season long. Prolon is a plant-based nutrition program featuring soups, snacks, and beverages. It's designed to nourish the body while keeping it in a fasting state, triggering cellular rejuvenation and renewal. Next Gen builds on the original Prolon with 100% organic soups and teas, a richer taste, and ready-to-eat meals. It's developed over decades at USC's Longevity Institute and backed by top U.S. medical centers. Prolon has been shown to support biological age reduction, metabolic health, skin appearance, fat loss, and energy. Guys, I wouldn't have believed this if I didn't do it for myself. I don't want to fast. I like eating, and it's really hard for me to completely not have any food. Enter Prolon. They have this amazing system where they deliver everything to your door. There are snacks and soups and teas that actually help you eat but stay in a fasting state. I couldn't believe how effective it was. For a limited time, you can be first in line to experience the new Next Gen at special savings. Prolon is offering the Prosecutors listeners 15% off site-wide, plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe to their 5-day nutrition program. Just visit prolonlife.com/prosecutors. That's prolonlife.com/prosecutors to claim your 15% discount and your bonus gift. prolonlife.com/prosecutors. This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game, shifting a little money here, a little money there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help find you options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. As summer winds down, I'm all about refreshing my wardrobe with staple pieces for the season ahead. Quince nails it with luxe essentials that feel effortless and look polished, perfect for layering and mixing. Their styles are so versatile. I find myself reaching for them again and again. Think chic cashmere and cotton sweaters starting at just $40, washable silk tops, and classic denim pants. Timeless styles you'll keep coming back to. And the best part? Everything with Quince is half the cost of similar brands. By working directly with top artisans and cutting out the middleman, Quince gives you luxury without the markup. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. Guys, there are so many different pieces in my wardrobe that I go to again and again, and they're all from Quince, especially with the weather starting to cool down, hopefully soon. I love my cashmere wear from Quince. Nothing is quite as soft or as luxurious, but an incredible price point. So elevate your fall wardrobe essentials with Quince. Go to quince.com/prosecutors for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/prosecutors to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/prosecutors.
Whether we're catching flights or catching sunsets, staying hydrated is a non-negotiable.
Fiji water is always in our carry-on. It's really from the islands of Fiji, and you can taste the difference.
That soft, smooth sip, it's the electrolytes for me. More than double compared to other premium waters.
And the 500 milliliter bottles, 100% recycled plastic since 2022. We love a travel companion that gives back.
For your next trip, layover, or beach escape, pack Earth's finest water.
Fiji water. Hydration, but make it luxe.
When that day did you first realize there was something wrong?
I would say close to dark, because, you would think in the neighborhood that we lived in, it was 28,000 people in West Memphis at the time. And you think you would ride around and find them. Now, after David and I rode around, couldn't find them. Pam and I rode around, couldn't find them. Pam called her dad and mom. They come down, but before they came down, you start to get a little worried, and, we're walking the streets, driving the streets, and just couldn't find them in our neighborhood.
And kind of bringing it back to that very moment when you said it starts getting dark, you're worried. Can you walk us through exactly how that happened? Who were you with? And did you say anything as you began to kind of realize maybe something was wrong?
Well, we went to every little convenience store. We'd go up and knock on people's houses. There was people outside. David and I was walking around, driving around. We went out of our neighborhood just in case they was riding somewhere else, and got out and walked different places, and we just never could find them. And then I had to go pick Pam up, and so I had to let her know. And there's always been a big issue that Pam has always said, he didn't let me know Stevie was missing. Well, at the time, I didn't know Stevie was missing. I just know we never run across him. But people never remember the part that Pam was the one who told him, you can go ride your bicycle. He wasn't at home when she went to work. They never talk about that. They always talk about how Terry never told him, he couldn't find him until I picked her up at the restaurant.
Well, let's go back to that, because I think that's a good point you're making. I mean, it's got to be like, okay, he's missing, but when did you absolutely know something horrible was wrong? Like, I mean, I would think you're probably starting to get concerned. You've possibly talked to some other parents and you realize Stevie's with a couple of his friends, but it's like panic probably isn't setting in with you at this point, and you think they're probably still out. They're probably okay. I think you make a very good point. Is there a point in that evening where you just absolutely knew, it hit you, something was terribly wrong? Or maybe it didn't yet. Maybe you're still thinking that nothing's wrong yet and they're just, out there goofing off.
Well, let me say this. There was a time when I go to the Moore's home and walk up and talking with Dana Moore, and Todd comes walking across the street. He lived across the street from them, introduced himself and asked if we seen Christopher. We said, so I think right then's when we kind of put it together that they were, all three of them are together. Okay, well, him and Mark and Melissa, his wife, go riding around looking, and me and Amanda keep riding around looking, and me and David keep riding around looking. And then back in the front yard at the Moore's home, when Mark come over, he said he was going to call the police and file a missing report. So Dana said she was going to call the police also. Well, I'm roughly a mile or a little bit less from my home. We don't have cell phones in 93. So I asked Dana, I said, would you let the police know that Stevie's with them also? And she said she would. Now, I hope she did. I don't know. I didn't go in to follow her. But I know when I went to pick Pam up, roughly around 9, maybe, a little after maybe, that we called the police from there. And they showed up and did a police report. And it was already dark. So, yeah, any parent would start to get a little concerned. And we were parents. We was concerned. We're having problems. We can't find them. That's a concern to any parent, especially 8-year-olds after dark.
So I don't want to pin you down on a time because this goes back 32 years. But if you can remember when you were over at the Moores and Mark comes over, do you remember if it was still light? Was it dark? Was it dusk? What do you recall about the time frame in terms of how light it was out?
Well, let me say this about times.
I know.
Beat up some.
I'm not going to beat you up. That's why I'm asking about how light it was.
Well, I honestly don't remember, but it seemed like it wasn't dark yet. Dusk maybe, but it
Okay.
wasn't dark.
Okay. That's why I didn't ask you about a specific time. I was just trying to get the sense. So it's dusk, and you've got now a group of parents who are worried, or at least starting to worry, like they're not coming back. And so what I think is interesting is you have 3 parents that are now concerned. You have 3 boys that are out there, and knowing that probably their parents at this point are going to be concerned that they're not home. So I just kind of wondering about the time frame. Are they already out there hurt or unable to leave where they're located at that point? So that was why I asked that question, just trying to say at this point, something is wrong with them. Something is wrong. But as parents, you don't know yet. You're starting to get worried. But all 3 boys probably knew they should have been home by this point if all their parents are now concerned, right? Would you agree with that, Terry?
I would. Yeah, because we didn't know, and you just don't know. You don't know what to expect. You don't know what you're doing. You're just out there looking for 3 boys.
Mm-hmm.
So you said you walked over to Dana's house. What led you to do that?
Well, that was kind of the rendezvous place. It wasn't the first time we had been at the Moore's house, that evening, because on my way to work, I drive by, I leave our home. I tell Pam, I said, we'll drive by the Moores and see if we see them over there. And we did. And when I dropped her off, I said, I'll drive back by the Moores, and see if we could see them over there. And I did. And we didn't see them, So it just seemed like that was the other 2 parents was right across the street from each other. He was with Michael, and it seemed like, you would think they would go back to Michael's house. That's where we had, we kept going every once in a while just to see.
At any point that night, did Dana come to your house?
He did, yeah. There was a.
Do you remember when that was?
Earlier, it was still daylight, but she come over to our house just to see if he was over there, see if Michael was there. I ain't gonna say what time. I don't do that.
But it was before you went back over to their house.
It was probably, just guessing. I'm sure it was in all them time frames, but there was a time I remember her showing up, her and Dawn, her daughter, at our house.
And did they come in, or did they just stay outside and ask if the boys had come back?
No, we stayed out in the driveway. Yep, they didn't come in.
And Terry, I may have misheard you, but earlier you said about going over to Dana's, it wasn't the first time. Do you mean it wasn't the first time this day, May 5th, wasn't the first time that it wasn't clear where the boys were, or just for that day?
That's the first time I'd ever been to their house was May 5th. And I drove past, like I said, I drove past to see if we could see them in the area. And then I drove Pam off. I drove back past their home.
Oh, I got you. I'm sorry. I misheard. So that was your first time to be at Dana's house. Okay.
And do you remember when Dana and Dawn had stopped by, and then when you went over to Dana's, was Amanda with you?
Yeah.
She was with you. And I've heard that you at some point were over at David's house as well.
I did go to David's house. I didn't. First of all, we didn't know anybody in West Memphis.
I was going to ask you that. Who were your friends there? Who were your friends? And I guess David was one of them.
Well, David, and there was another lady that Pam run across in one of the stores over there. But yeah, David was probably the only man friend, I guess you could say it like that would go. I give him a guitar. I love to play guitars, and so I give him a guitar one time and went over and showed him a key or two, and we tried to figure out some more keys so we could play it. But yeah, David was with me on and off during the night. Because, as a matter of fact, at the time, David, he was a steel worker. But at the time of this, steel industry was slow and he was out of work. And I got him a job at the ice cream company that I worked at, trying to help him out.
And when you went over to his house, was that before or after you saw Dana, or was it in between? Do you remember the sequence of when you saw people?
No, I'm not going to try to.
Okay. I don't blame you.
Yeah, I don't want people picking on me, and they do that anyway. Any little thing I say, they pick it apart. And so I try not to put myself there.
Okay, understood. And so you just would generally describe David as one of your friends that were there, and you didn't have a lot of other friends in West Memphis at the time.
Right. David was a good man. He had a family over there, and so he was working, taking care of his family, and that's the only thing I was doing, taking care of my family.
Did you go over to his house regularly after work to visit him with the kids?
No.
Was that something you did? No. So this was not something you did all the time.
Right. No, I didn't go hang out at nobody's house. I had a pool in my backyard. That's where I was.
You had a pool?
I had a 33.
You love that pool.
I promise you. We all did.
I don't blame you. You need a pool in Arkansas. That's for sure.
It was hot.
So Amanda was with you the whole time you're looking for Stevie, and when you're she was not?
Not the whole time. She was with me at the beginning until I went over to David's to see if David would go help me. And I left Amanda over with David's wife and their daughter. And me and David went riding around looking to see if we could find three boys or two boys.
Mm-hmm. And during that time, did you guys go over to the area of Robin Hood Hills?
Well, probably not at that moment because we didn't know nothing about Robin Hood Hills. But we run across an older young man that told us he seen everybody that we was stopping. We'd ask if you seen some boys on bicycles. Some would say yes, some would say no. One man told us, yeah, they went over in them woods, and he called them Robin Hood or something like that. So we didn't know. So there was times all during the night that David and I was together. David was with Pam's dad and mom. David was with us, all of us together, and Mark Byers and Melissa. There was times we was just scattered, walking, driving all night long. We'd even go down to the police station as a group and ask them. So surely, people has always beat me up over an alibi. Surely there was police footage because they had cameras everywhere at that police station. So surely there's footage of all of us together. There was one time that the three men went together, me, David, and Pam's dad went down there, so at the police station. So, I'm sure there's footage of that.
Mm-hmm. And over at Robin Hood Hills, now I've never been there, but I've seen the pictures of the area. And if you were to drive over there, would there be a place to park? If you wanted to park there and walk into the woods, was there a parking area?
Well, not a parking area because it was in the middle of a field. There was fields around it on the front side toward the highway, interstate. And on the back side of it, there was, homes. There was a street. And on one side of the street was homes. And then there's some apartments that was on one end of it. But it seemed like there was a place that I guess the farmers would pull into when they would come and bale it for hay, because I remember seeing them bale it for hay over the years. And there was a place that they could pull up into. So to me, that's your parking lot. Just a little gravel road or muddy road, especially if it was wet.
Mm-hmm. And from that area, if you're standing up there, and this goes back to that time period, so you may not remember, if you were looking, from what I can tell, you'd have to go kind of downhill a little bit to that big pipe.
Right.
Is there, okay, and could you see that pipe from up, like if you were to park up there, and would you be able to see the pipe from that point?
No, I think no, because it was grown up so much, you had to follow a little path down to the pipe.
Okay. And if the boys, and bear with me here, if the boys were going to be going into the woods, and I know that you didn't know at the time that if they played in those woods, but what I want you to do is just speculate like what you think they would do. Where would they park their bikes if they were going to cross that pipe and go play further into the woods? Would they take their bikes down to the pipe? Would they leave them up on the road area? Where do you think is the best place that they would have parked their bikes?
Well, I don't know. I don't know where they parked them at. I know where they found them at, but I don't know where they would park them at, because it was just grown up like you wouldn't believe.
And where'd they find them that you remember?
Right there close to the pipe. In the water, there was a 10-mile bayou that run through West Memphis, and it went right under that pipe. and I believe they found the bicycles, a couple of them right there.
And they were in the water in the bayou?
They were.
They were. So do you know if they were completely submerged or how they found them? Could they see them under the water when they looked, or do you not know?
Well, I don't know, because it was dark when we was out in the woods looking, so I don't think we could have seen them. But the daylight come along is probably how they found them. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. So whoever did this to them took the bikes and threw them in the bayou.
Yes, that's where they found them.
I'm just trying to figure out, like, if someone were to come along and they're like up on that road and the boys are in the woods and they've, obviously didn't take their bikes across the pipe, I don't think. I think that would be difficult. If this person or anyone could see that their bikes parked somewhere, or would they have been hidden? I just wonder how easy would it have been for them just to take their bikes down close to the pipe, leave them right there at the pipe, cross the pipe, go into the woods and come back out, or would they have left them up higher? Because I don't know what the terrain would be like exactly, or how hard that would be.
Well, I don't either. I don't know. I know where the train was, but I don't know where they parked them, how they got in the water, who put them in the water. But I think that's where they found them, in the water.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember if any witnesses said they just saw the bikes without the kids?
I don't remember hearing nothing like it.
Okay.
A couple questions, backing up just a little bit. So between when you dropped Pam off at work and then when you went to go pick her up, did you basically always either have Amanda or have David with you? Was there any period of time when it was just you?
Well, I don't believe there was. I had Amanda, and when I took her over to David, I had David with me. So, and then I take David back later on to pick Amanda up so I could go pick up Pam. So I don't believe I was by myself at any that evening. Between the hours of 5 and 9, that's when her work began. So I don't think I was by myself.
And then you've mentioned I know at various times, eventually people started migrating down towards what we now know as Robin Hood Hills. Do you remember the first time you were in the area of the woods near the pipe that day?
Well, it seemed like I said earlier that some old young man told us that he seen boys going in there in the woods on bicycles heading that way. And it seemed like that was about the time that Wheel of Fortune was on. Because he said he had to hurry up and get in and watch Wheel of Fortune. So it was probably shortly after that. And I run across Christopher's brother. Now, he's got a brother, older brother, that night that he was with one or two of his friends. They was riding bicycles, and they were out also looking for the boys. And we had run across him. We asked, I'm standing there talking to his brother, and I asked him, you seen the boys? He said no, but that he was going to go check the manhole down by the pipe close to the bayou. And I didn't know what he was talking about. And I said, all right, just be careful. And he took off his bicycle.
You don't happen to remember when Wheel of Fortune came on, do you?
At 5:30 or 6.
I made a note to look.
I'd even been 6:30. I'm not sure. But I remember that old boy saying that.
Back to your manhole. Did people play in the manholes or something? Did you ever get any clarity on why someone would look in the manhole?
No, that wasn't my department. That belonged to the city. I don't know. I don't see it. I don't think no one could get the top off of it because it was a big old metal top. But we did see it later on, but no, it was a big concrete manhole with a big metal top on it.
Do you remember where you were when you learned that the boys' bodies had been found?
May the 6th. We were roughly in the area of the school. We seen Weaver Elementary. That's where the boys went to school at. We seen them vehicles parked on there, so we pulled in and asked them, if they had seen some boys. And that right then is where they told us that they found some boys in Robin Hood.
Was that just regular people, or were they police officers?
No, it was just young folks hanging around the school that we just stopped in just to see out of curiosity, and that's what we found out.
Did they have any kind of details, or other than they just found the kids?
Right, no details. They just said that, we heard that they found some boys in Robin Hood.
And then what'd you do?
Well, we went to where Robin Hood was, and it was we went to Robin Hood, but it was down by the Mayfair Apartments or Mayfield Apartments, whatever it was called. It's where there was a parking. I guess there was a parking lot for the apartments. But we pull in there, and all you could see is there was some people there. A few people there, quite a few. And then all you could see is crime scene tape, which wasn't really impressive. And we get out, and me and Pam started to walk up there. She just, I guess her legs went out from under, and she fell, and was crying, yelling, and it was heartbreaking, to see that part of it. So I went ahead and we got her back to where she could sit down by the vehicle, our car. Then I walk on up to the crime scene tape, and that's where first time I met Gary Gitchell. He was standing at the tape, and that's when I asked him, I said, "What's going on here?" He said, "Who are you?" And I told him, and I said, "We've been looking for our boys all night." And he said, "Well, looks like we've had a homicide." And I said, "What'd you say?" And he said, "Looked like they've been murdered." And that's how we found out.
How did you react?
There's no react. You just probably automatically go into shock that quick. I think I sat down on the ground, couldn't believe what he just told me. And he gave me something to drink. And, but I don't think he had time to read. You just don't know, really trying to guess what he said.
Did they tell you anything else other than that at that time?
No.
Did they give you any details?
No details. And probably it's not the time to get details. I'm not even sure they knew what they was details. That's just what he told me.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely heartbreaking. I had to make my way back to the car and tell Pam, of which I think everybody knew anyway, because the crime scene tape, that something wasn't right. So I had to tell Pam, and that's one of the hardest things you can do is go back and tell your wife something like that. How you do that?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I cannot imagine what you dealt with.
Thank you, because I can't imagine it either.
Yeah. How did you cope in the days and the weeks after? How did you cope?
I don't think you had coping time. You had media chasing you around, wanting to know, and one good thing about the media, every one of them know, how you feel, how you feel, how you feel. And then, how do you feel? You're numb, you're in shock, and still you're dodging them. They chasing you all over the place and all out there making stories and you're seeing all this stuff on the TVs. My dad and mom come down from up here in the mountains, and Dad told me, he said, I first heard about this on the radio, and he said they was talking about mutilation and everything like that, and so then here they come. They came down quick. So I don't think you had time to feel or know anything. You just threw out there in la la land, and all this stuff coming across the airways, and we tried not to watch the TV, but how could you? The police was doing their investigating, so they don't talk to you during that period, and you just waiting to see what's next, I guess.
So nobody talked with you and Pam, and you just had to hear stuff on the news? Is that what I'm understanding?
Some of the details you would hear on the news. Yeah, the police had talked to us, asked questions about different things. But the police did talk to you, but they wouldn't go into details about what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
Got that from the airwaves.
What were you hearing on the news and the radio? What kinds of things?
All kind of things. Devil worshiping, satanic rituals, and 3 murdered kids mutilated, and castrated, and everything. I mean, it was just unbelievable what we were hearing.
Were you hearing this just right away, right after the bodies were found, or in the days or weeks after? Was it just kind of constant?
Oh, it was constant, and it was days, not weeks. The media, man, they had them a story, I guess. That's the way they look at it. But it was days.
Mm-hmm. And you were saying that the media was chasing you. Did you stay home, or did you have a place to go to get away from them? Or did you just stay home or go to family's house? What did you do?
Well, we didn't have no family in West Memphis. I went to work trying to find some relief but that was hard. And my boss he said, Terry, you take all the time off you need and just deal with this, whatever you got to do. Just know that we're here. And if you need us, but no, you stayed in your house if you didn't want to go outside and get on camera. Stay in your house.
Mm-hmm. And you didn't go anywhere. You said you tried to work for a little bit, but when your boss gave you some time off, you just stayed home and just tried to hide out from media there.
Well, we was also investigating. I mean, that might not sound funny, but it was really not knowing what was going on with the police. Here we are out here trying to figure out what happened, who did it, and all kinds of things, and that's just the world that you're tossed into or drug into, you might say.
And when you say you were trying to investigate, what were you doing? Were you trying to talk to people and ask questions? What were you doing?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's one time we went to a church in West Memphis, and for some reason, Pam had this one church in her sights, and she just wasn't going to let off this church for nothing. She walked around by one of the buildings that had a light on. The carpet was missing, and they was putting new carpet down. But that day, they done tore the carpet up, waiting on the new carpet to come in. That's the room. That's the carpet. But, I mean, that's just how the mind acts, treats people. So you just ride around, look at everything. Everything is a suspect, even in your eyes, the parents.
Did you ever consider getting out of West Memphis for a little while?
Well, yeah, we did. We moved, actually, just a few weeks after it happened, up to where Pam's family lived in Bible. We did move. And, there was just so much happening that had to put some distance between me and the family and get away. And I went up to be around my family, and which did me a lot of good. Because every family deals with things different. And then there was times I would go back and hopefully it was getting better, and then it wasn't.
In what way? What do you mean? In what way were you hoping it would get better? Like, what was the worst part?
Living with Pam, yeah, because, and I understand it was her son, our son, my stepson, and all this, but still she was just devastated. I mean, she couldn't think straight. She was hurt so bad, and her family was so protective of her. And, it's like they didn't want you around because they was trying to help her deal with it or come to grips with it and deal with it. So there was no bad people in the family. It was just overprotected, that when push comes to shove, you see what people's made of. And they loved her to death. They loved me to death. But there was a time when they would just put me on the sidewalk and just show her all the love they could. They didn't care about anybody else's love. They were just all trying to come to grips with what had happened. I was too. I couldn't believe it either.
Well, I was going to ask, were you able to mourn at all? Did you? And I don't mean that. Yeah, I don't mean that as a judgmental question. Just curious, based on everything that was going on, it does sound to me like you didn't have a chance to mourn yourself.
For 12 years, I lived with her after this happened. And that was the worst 12 years of my life, seriously, because it was investigating still 12 years later. And I'm not sure why the denial was there. People the family just wouldn't believe anything the police said. Didn't want to sit through the trials, even though we did. Just didn't want to accept it. They did accept it at first, but, when the filmmakers and the money guys and the defense investigators showed up with all of their stuff, well, they started changing minds.
Well, let's go back to you and how did you feel when Damien, Jason, and Jesse were arrested?
Well, we get a call, come to court the next day, and you'll get to see who's being charged for this. So we heard it on the media. The police called us and asked us to come the next day, and that's when we went. And, you look at them and you just see 3 teenagers, and you don't know what to think about them. But I was just like any other dad. If I'd have got my hands on any one of them, I'd have just whooped the stew plumb out of him and not batted an eye.
Were you relieved? Were you?
No relief.
Just none?
No. dealing with anger. You're dealing with different steps of the grief process. And no, you're not relieved. No, ma'am, there's more anger there. Any one of us would have loved to got our hands on them boys at the time.
Mm-hmm. And if they hadn't have been arrested, or let's say no one was ever arrested, what would justice look like to you?
Well, that would be a nightmare. I don't know what it would be. You know, I can imagine that.
Are you at peace with knowing that they got the right people for this, right offenders?
I've always been, after the trials, I've always been okay with, okay, it looks like you arrested the right people and you presented your case to the juries, two juries, and the juries believed you enough that they come up with 3 convictions, and the boys went and started serving their life sentence. I was okay with that, but that doesn't make it okay, because while they're off to their new parade, we're starting to deal with reality. Our kids is dead. Our kids are never coming home, and we're some pissed off parents. Excuse my French. But yeah, we're still ticked off like you wouldn't believe.
Look, guys, I love true crime probably more than most people, but know what I don't love? Thinking about true crime all night. I spend so much time researching these cases and getting into all of the bloody details, then end up scaring myself to death and spending even more time trying to get myself to sleep. For the longest time, I would wake up groggy, dragging myself around and binging coffee all day to keep myself awake and hold off the crash. But I've finally found something that breaks that cycle for good. Enter Beam's Dream Powder. Because when it comes to solving the case of your sleepless nights, Dream is a lifesaver. When I found Dream, everything changed. I started sleeping through the night without tossing and turning, and I woke up energized, not groggy. It's been a game changer for me. Dream is made with a powerful blend of all natural ingredients: reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, abigenin, and melatonin. It's designed to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up feeling amazing. And unlike other sleep aids, there's no next day grogginess, just great restful sleep. Plus, Dream tastes incredible, and it's become a part of my nightly routine. Simple, easy, and effective. My focus and energy came back and finally felt like I could tackle life head on instead of just trying to get through it. And I'm not the only one. Beam has already improved over 17.5 million nights of sleep, helping people across the country wake up and feel their best. And here's the twist. Beam's giving our listeners an exclusive offer of up to 40% off their best-selling Dream Powder. That's right, up to 40% off to finally crack the case of your bad sleep. Go to shopbeam.com/prosecutors and use code prosecutors at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/prosecutors and use code prosecutors for up to 40% off. Because better sleep, that's the kind of mystery you can solve. This is an ad by BetterHelp. These days, I feel like there's advice for everything: cold plunges, gratitude journals, screen detoxes. But how do you know what actually works for you? With the internet and information overload about mental health and wellness, it can be a struggle to know what's true and what actions to take these days. Using trusted resources and talking to live therapists can get you personalized recommendations and help you break through the noise. I know for me, it's so helpful to know how to be my best self, to learn positive coping skills, how to set boundaries, and enter BetterHelp. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. And it works, with an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 for a live session based on over 1.7 million client reviews. And it's very convenient. You can join a session with a therapist at the click of a button. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/prosecutors. That's BetterHelp.com/prosecutors. Guys, we spend so much time caring for the skin on our face, but what about our neck? With summer in full swing, your neck and chest are more exposed than ever. Whether you're rocking sundresses, swimsuits, or strappy tops, your neck is out there for the world to see, and it's one of the first places to show signs of aging. That's why Go Pure Beauty created their revolutionary Tighten and Lift Neck Cream, perfect for your summer skincare routine. It's powered by clinically proven active ingredients. This advanced formula is designed to visibly firm, smooth, and rejuvenate the delicate skin on your neck and chest in as little as 4 to 8 weeks. I've been spending nearly every day this summer at the pool, and honestly, my skin started to show the effects of being in the sun all the time, especially my neck because I'm always in a bathing suit. Well, once I started Go Pure, I really saw how incredible it was. It wasn't just about transforming the skin on my neck. They have these full-line science-backed skin and body care to tighten, lift, and smooth skin from head to toe. All Go Pure products are cruelty-free, paraben-free, and sulfate-free, so you know you're giving your skin clean, effective care without the harsh chemicals or compromises. With over 1 million jars sold, this beauty secret is no longer a secret. For a limited time, our listeners get 25% off Go Pure with code Prosecutors at checkout. Just head to gopurebeauty.com, use code Prosecutors, and you're all set. And after you buy, do us a favor. When they ask where you heard about Go Pure, tell them it was from our show.
So the convictions didn't really provide any, that closure word people like to throw around. That didn't happen when you got the guilty verdicts.
Right. No, it's there and you're sitting there and you're going through all this, but it doesn't give you any satisfaction. None at all. Well, now you're looking at parents that would probably do anything to get their hands on them, even go in prison. That was going through your mind. How can I get inside there to get to them? You know, it's just the way it was.
Terry, you said that, you guys didn't want to sit through the trials, but of course you did. And I know you had said that you heard a lot of what happened to the boys from the media rather than from law enforcement. Were there things that you learned during the trial about what had happened that you didn't know from either the investigators or from media reports?
Well, there was a time after they come back from the state medical examiner's office, they sent Stevie up to Blytheville to, I think, Steele, Missouri is where he went to the funeral home. That 3 of us men went down to look at him. And it was unbelievable what we walked in and seen. This is part you never heard on the media, and we chose not to look at the pictures in the trials because they had a lot of pictures there. So we would get up and walk out, but when it actually came to the funeral home is where 3 men went down and looked at it. It was just unbelievable.
I'm so sorry you had to see him like that.
You okay?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Okay.
Terry, we're all of us are parents as well. And I can't imagine what it must feel to have cameras stuck in your face for so many years and people just barraging you with questions about a very, very intense time of your life. You sat through these trials, and when the verdict came back that they were guilty, having seen all the evidence, what were your thoughts? Did you think, I'm glad that the jury came to the right decision, or did you have any other thoughts as you heard the verdict read regarding their guilt?
Well, I don't know if you would remember any of the thoughts that you had read then, and you might feel some relief of knowing that this part of this chapter is over with. So their new journey begins behind bars, and our new journey begins dealing with grief, because I'm not sure at what point grief sets in, but I know from the beginning you deal with shock, and we did that, and we probably were still in shock during the trials. So there's a time when grief takes its toll and goes through the stages, and it's up to each individual to deal with that, accept or not accept, deny, whatever, deal with the anger. I had a bad issue with the anger over this. It was consuming me, and it was defining me as to be someone I'm not. And I joined grief share places. I've been kicked out of grief share places because people didn't know, and people just are people that think the worst. So I was asked to not come back to some grief shares, and, which fuels the fire, so you're mad about several different things until I finally seen, I can't do this no more. I made my way to a church. I made my way to an altar, and I said, good Lord, here, can't do this no more. I left my anger at that altar. I got up, and you know what? That's the best thing I ever done. I was able to start living after that. Before that, it wasn't pretty the way you had to deal with this.
When you talk about anger, what do you think your anger was directed at specifically? Do you have any sense of that?
3 teenagers.
Have you ever, you talked about how at first Pam and her family believed that they had the right people, but then they started to maybe second guess that. Have you ever doubted that Damien, Jason, and Jesse killed Stevie, Michael, and Christopher?
I never have doubted that, especially since the trial. And if I would have let the same people who tried to get to me that got to Pam and offered her money, told her you can get money if you help us get out of prison, same people that went to Mark Byers, and I would probably have thought different, but they tried me and really put me through it, and I still have never changed my mind, never even doubted the police departments. I don't know if you used to have that article that the police put it in the paper, but I still have the article from 2007 where the police puts out there Terry wasn't a suspect in 1993, and he's still not a suspect in 2007 as Ron Lax and his PR firm and the local media and the national media started throwing my name out there amongst the wolves, so, and I'm still not a suspect today in the police's eyes, only in the defenses and all this stuff that they've started.
And Terry, I'm going to ask you this question, and I don't want it to insult you, but people are going to want me to ask, and I feel like you should have the opportunity to answer it. Did you have anything to do with this?
No, sir, I did not.
So it's been 30-some years. Is there anything that we haven't asked, or is there anything that you want to say that you've been waiting all this time to say, and this is your opportunity to speak to the public, to speak to critics or doubters or whoever? Is there anything you want to say to those people?
Well, I would like to say something to the lawmakers. Put some stuff in writing, put it on the books where people can't just take victims' families and rake them over the coals like they do some of us. But again, saying that, you have to look at some of these other cases where it is the victims' families that is the perpetrators. I've seen so many shows on TV, I quit watching them because I get mad because it's that person that give me a bad name. And I talk to some lawmakers and they say, well, when you figure out how to word this, let us know, because we've been trying to figure out how to word it also to make it legit, make it a law, and at the same time, when they're trying to do all this wording, you have other people that commits crimes, and it is the family members, but there are some of us out here that gets beat up because of them, so you're looking at one, and I hate to say that, but I've been beat up so much. I got an armor suit that I may start wearing because you can only take so much, and you have to do something. And to all the critics, and there's a bunch of them out here, pick on someone else. My back's hurt. I've been stabbed in the back so many times, and I'm just trying to keep my head up. And the water's deep, and people's trying to pull you right under that water. So I'm trying to keep my head up and do what's right out here and help someone in their journey. And I write songs. I have a YouTube account, and I write songs, play music, put it on there, which is some kind of therapeutic for me. And hearts are broken, lives are changed, but never give up the faith or the hope, and believe. And I told this a lot of that sometimes you have to believe in something. And I've always believed in the case work, courts, and the police work that I've spit through and watched, and and the trials, and just because George comes along and says something don't mean I'm gonna believe George. because George is not a police. He's just someone out here speculating. So I believe what I seen in the trials, and we all did at the time. Some of us went on the Geraldo show in the 90s, and they was just as big a believer back then as they was in the trials. And then they changed, but I don't flip like that. I believe it is what it is, and I'm glad to say that I've never doubted the work of the police department.
Well, Terry, you've been incredibly generous with your time. We've kept you for quite a while. Before we sign off, Alice, Julia, any last thoughts, any last questions that you guys had?
Terry, truly, thank you for so much time. I know we faced some technical difficulties and you kept coming back to talk with us. And we truly appreciate you sharing that. What you say about victims and victims' families, it's absolutely true, especially with the rise. I don't even know that it's the rise. It's an age-old fascination with really the tragedies of people's lives. And so thank you for being a voice to that, but also recognizing that each investigation is unique in its own. You can't just write off entire classes of people, but I appreciate you keeping your head up and speaking to us about this, and also recognizing that you're speaking to us, 32 years later, and a lot of, who can remember the time that I ate dinner yesterday, much less 32 years ago. So I recognize that we were asking you questions that truly there may not be answers to anymore, but I appreciate you entertaining those questions for us and giving us your time on that. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And I want to thank Brett and Alice first for allowing me to be here for this conversation with you, Terry. And really the only thing I have to say is I just wish you peace for the rest of your life.
Thank you. Thank you, Miss Alice. Thank you, Miss Julie.
All right. Well, thank you, sir, for joining us. And I hope everyone enjoyed this conversation. We will be back next week. But until then, I'm Brett.
And I'm Alice.
And this is The Prosecutors. Who is her nephew and is someone that she thinks might be involved in the crime. You okay? What went wrong? Everything was going so well. Alice is very angry. Either Jason or Domini, I'm sure they both own jeans with tears in them. How did we lose her again? I don't know why. Why are we cursed like this? I am not cursed. Just me and the Hollingsworth family tree here.
Hi, I'm Jessie Prey. And I'm Andy Cassette. Welcome to Love Murder, where we unravel the darkest tales of romance turned deadly. Our episodes are long-form, narrative-driven, and deeply researched. Perfect for the true crime aficionados seeking stories beyond the headlines. Like the chilling case of Blanche Taylor Moore, the so-called Black Widow who left a trail of poisoned lovers. Or the shocking murders of Chad Shelton and Dwayne Johnson, where family ties masked a sinister plot. Subscribe to Love Murder on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.